I am very pleased to have been given the opportunity to deliver this year's Requiem Mass address. I'm pleased, of course, because of my lifelong involvement in St. Kitts and Nevis Labour Party. And I'm pleased because I have for the past 2 years had the honor of being the Labour representative for Central Basti in our National Assembly. In addition to these reasons, however, I am pleased because it gives me the opportunity to bring into sharper focus than usual the impact of labor on women in this country. First of all, I want to say that labor is as much a spirit and a belief system as it is a political party. And by that I mean that labor, the political party, grew out of and is based on the belief and understanding that no human being or group of human beings is better than any other, despite race, class, creed, gender, sexual preference. Because of this, labor has always believed and understood that all human beings are deserving of the same chances and opportunities as everyone else. In other words, labor has always believed in the innate worth of every human being, its inception in 1932. About 100 years after the abolition of slavery, amid deplorable and oppressive working conditions, poor health services, poor housing, child labor, no opportunities for education. At a time when it was still illegal to form trade unions, the Workers' League was born. Thomas Manchester, J. Matthew Sebastian, and Edgar Challenger, among others, stepped boldly in 1932 to challenge the oppressive working conditions, poor quality of life meted out to the working class at the time. The general discontent among workers, coupled with the oppression and ill treatment of workers and their families, led to several mini incidents of rebellion, quickly mushroomed into the Buckley's riots of 1935. Strikes throughout the various plantations led to marches to the streets by sugar workers who were joined in solidarity by stevedores, porters, farmers, seamstresses, road workers, store clerks, and generally all those citizens who felt it was timely to register their frustration with the administration of the day. By 1940, it was no longer illegal to form unions, and the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union was registered on 15th May 1940 to champion the cause of workers for better quality of life. Men like Bradshaw, France, and Southwell, Glassford, later Moore, Bryant, and Payne joined Manchester, Sebastian, and Challenger as leaders of the movement. The Workers' League, formed in 1932, became the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party in 1957. And so this year, 2012, we proudly celebrate 80 years since the formation of this great party, which in partnership with the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labor Union has transformed the lives of our people and the landscape of our Twin Island Federation. Our leaders today, Plus, Condor, Harris, Martin, as well as Herbert and Cedric Liburd, are standing on the shoulders of Manchester, Sebastian, Challenger, Bradshaw, Southwell, France, Oxford, Williams, Bryant, Moore, Payne, and all who carried the burden of labor over these 80 years. They benefited from a rich legacy, and as servants of the people and trustees of our estate, added enormous value to the stock, so that we, the beneficiaries, can justifiably say on this 80th anniversary that our best interests are truly being served. As we celebrate 80 years of existence as a party, and today, as we reflect on and memorialize our leaders now departed, I wish to focus on the part women played in struggles over the years and show how our leaders were progressive thinkers and ahead of their time. Permit me a brief foray into the past to trace the evolution of women in St. Kitts and Nevis. Betta Douglas was born in St. Kitts around the year 1772. Her mother was an enslaved woman, and as a woman's status determined that of her offspring, Betta was born into slavery as part of the renewable labor supply in St. Kitts. Her father was white, and was therefore free. Betta was the mother of 2 sons, and she was enslaved at Romney's plantation. Betta tried on several occasions to free herself and her 2 sons. She used formal methods, and when that failed, she persisted in other ways. She refused rations. She refused to comply with the rules. She was confined, jailed, hired out, and eventually, Betta took the ultimate step and ran away. Betta's story is inspirational for her heroic resistance to enslavement. It serves as a platform for women's struggles in the post-emancipation period. In all the recordings of the uprisings, strikes, and marches of the 1930s, the contribution of women to these struggles has been, for the most part, unrecorded and unrecognized, even though there is some mention that women were among those arrested during that period, giving credence to the belief that women were in the forefront of the struggles. There is, however, some recording of the contribution of Isa A.E. Bradley. Isa A.E. Bradley, daughter of Thomas Bradley and his wife Blanche Watley, was born in Newtown on 19th May 1887 and lived at Salpon Alley, also known as Sugarloaf Alley, in a house she inherited from her grandfather, John Thomas Bradley, a steward. Unmarried and with no children of her own, Bradley was devoted to the teaching profession. She started as a pupil at the Moravian School in the district of Keon, and after a course at Spring Gardens in Antigua, she returned to her school and was appointed headmistress. Bradley was later appointed headmistress of the Bastia Girls' School, was responsible for the early education of many of the girls in the Bastia area. Among the girls she tutored were the 3 daughters of J. Matthew Sebastian, Isme Burt, and Gwen Watty, all of whom followed in her footsteps and became highly admired and respected teachers in their own right. Bradley was a member of the Mutual Improvement Society and the Universal Benevolent Society in its early days. Because of her employment, she had to keep a low profile. Being an outspoken person, Bradley could not keep quiet for long. The irrepressible spirit of Betta Douglas filled her. She became a member of the board of the directors of the Workers' League, and during the 1937 campaign, she was visible on the League's platform. The colonial government was facing challenges throughout the Caribbean at the time. In a speech made by Bradley in Old Road during the campaign, she was reported to have told her listeners how a certain German minister had referred disparagingly to her pupils. It was one of the several illustrations she gave to show that no white man should be elected to the council. Edgar Ballinger, then vice president of the League, quickly dissociated himself from her statement, stating that it was not the League's policy to encourage such ideas. The slogan caught on, and the laborers all over were heard repeating it. Later that year, Marcus Garvey visited the kids and was welcomed on arrival by J. Matthew Sebastian, who was reportedly accompanied by an ex-woman school teacher of constitutional prominence. Since no other retired female school teacher is mentioned as having been actively involved in politics of the time, it is reasonable to conclude that this person was Bradley. Bradley was also a founding member and vice president of the Teachers Association. Bradley died on 25th September 1947. By the time of Bradley's death, up until 1951, women were still denied the right to vote or to be elected. As we know, before the emergence of the Labour Party, the vote was limited to those who had property. And as we know, most of those who had property in the early 20th century were male. What this restriction law really meant, therefore, that the vote was the preserve primarily of men. Women were effectively locked out. When Labour fought to extend the vote to everyone, Labour in effect gave new powers, not only to the propertyless, but indeed to females, the last benefit of us all. If you were to examine all the changes that Labour brought to this country over the 80 years, ladies and gentlemen, you will see that they were all rooted in the rock-solid belief of equal opportunity for all. What is very real, however, is the impact of these changes on women and girls. Let us look, for example, at what Labour did for the women and girls of this country when they decided to open our nation's high schools to all children. Ever since the end of slavery in St. Kitts and Nevis, children from poor families all throughout the Caribbean had no choice but to find some kind of work when they completed the 7th standard we hear so much about. And as you can imagine, it's a life of real hardship for hundreds of thousands of boys and girls, men and women, throughout the length and breadth of the archipelago. However, whereas the boys could learn a trade that might at least later permit them to make a living as a carpenter, a builder, or some other area of endeavor, options open to women and girls were far more limited. This injustice and this unconscionable waste of human potential was unacceptable in the eyes of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party. And so, despite vocal and relentless opposition from powerful quarters on these two islands, whose interests were served by maintaining socio-economic class divisions, Labour moved to force open the doors of our secondary schools so that every child, whether their father worked in the cane fields or their mother could find no work at all, had the right information and opportunities that had long been the preserve in St. Kitts and Nevis of the privileged few. Suddenly, girls and poor families were being exposed to ideas and subjects and possibilities that they could never in their wildest dreams have contemplated before. Subjects like chemistry and physics were for the first time being taught to girls. And with better educated women came better educated children and families. Greater security in the home, greater dignity and self-mastery, dramatically reduced vulnerability and dependency for Kittitian and Nevisian girls who for centuries had been denied the options that a secondary education can bring. As a matter of fact, our country's very first female physician was able to reach this important career milestone as a direct result of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party's decision to open the doors of our high schools to everyone. Since those early days, ladies and gentlemen, we have had female doctors, female accountants, female scientists, female engineers, female lawyers, entrepreneurs, chief executive officers, and yes, politicians, females in every field, making important and worthwhile contributions, not only here at home, but in countries far and wide. Free, mandatory, and universal secondary education was at that time unheard of in the Caribbean. However, that was irrelevant to Labour. It needed to be done, and Labour would not and did not rest until it was done, to the enduring benefit of the females all throughout these two islands. Sometimes it seems that we, the parents and grandparents, have somehow forgotten to remind our children and grandchildren how we got to this point of universal education that is being followed all over the Caribbean today. Only last week, I had a talk with the Minister of Education of Antigua. Antigua is just trying to bring that into being some 40-something years after us. This Labour Party, ladies and gentlemen, has always been very progressive where the role and value of women are concerned. And we have worked to ensure the advancement of women, not only in society in general, but most importantly, within the party itself. As a result, at a time when many throughout the Caribbean, and indeed around the world, believed that a woman's place was in the home, Labour knew that the involvement women had always been key to our success. And history demonstrates the respect that this party has always had for women, and the substantive and meaningful ways in which we highlighted their importance to our party. Indeed, women have always been key and welcome participants in the Labour campaign trail, and anyone who is in the least bit familiar with politics over the years in St. Kitts and Nevis would know how active and how key women have been to the success and the forward movement of Labour. Bratcher, Southwell, France, Moore, Brand, Payne not only paved the way for women to evolve as leaders, but encouraged and promoted their involvement. Bratcher recognized that it was the women who carried the campaign to the streets and alleys, the highways and the byways. He praised his women warriors and acknowledged, recognized, and respected them. And so Margaret Moses, Ivy Harrigan, May Warner, Emily Allen, Edith Adams, Veronica Byron, Liburd, May Jeffers, Maud Nisbet, Icus Matthew, Moggy Bryan, Celia Newton, Pete Warren, and Lizzie Shari, to name a few, were stalwarts on the campaign trail, bringing home the victory for Labour, time after time. They were fearless and indomitable. You didn't want to get in there with them. I recall that on return from one of his travels, Mr. Batcher bought a transistor radio for Emily. Emily spoke about this radio fondly to all who would listen and took it everywhere with her. She and her radio from Papa Batcher became inseparable. Liburd became the leader of the women. She led labor women, trade union women, National Council of Women, Toastmasters, eventually Caribbean Women's Association, Carriwa. She ran Learn to Earn courses for grassroots women throughout the island in an effort to make women economically independent. She organized courses for women to learn to establish cottage industries for self-employment, while she ran courses in effective public speaking for women, building their confidence and self-esteem. In the meantime, the Labour administration appointed Lilith Niwana in 1975 as Permanent Secretary and was the first female to hold that position. Then in 1976, Christine Atherton was the first female appointed to the post of Accountant General. When we consider the fact that more than half of the permanent secretaries today are female, ministries like finance, sustainable development, national security, that women are heading social security, financial services, director of public prosecution, that in the diplomatic field, Labour has appointed 4 female ambassadors. The first time females are appointed as ambassadors. Ambassador Rosalind Hazel, Ambassador Jacinth Henry Martin, Ambassador Jasmine Huggins, and Ambassador Shirley Skerritt. These 2 appointments in the 1970s may seem insignificant, but at that time, they represented the opening of the door for women in leadership positions, particularly when it was still felt that a woman's place is in the home. The foresight and progressive thinking of our Labour leaders in promoting women cannot be overstated or gainsaid. On the political front, it was Labour who elected Mrs. Ada May Edwards to Parliament as the first female Speaker of the House. Mrs. Edwards, who was an executive officer of the St. Kitts Nevis Trades and Labour Union from 1972, made history as our first female in Parliament. She participated in the 3rd session of the 31st Parliament of Legislative Assembly on Ontario in 1979 and the 15th Caribbean Regional Conference of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association held in Nassau, Bahamas in the same year. It is significantly noteworthy that the second female speaker, your humble servant, was elected by another Labour government. Yet, the country's 2 female speakers in the federal parliament were elected by consecutive Labour governments. The enormity and critical importance of Ada May's election to Parliament in the journey and rise of women in leadership under Labour is further highlighted when one considers this was pre-independence. Compare this with what was termed a landmark day for America on 3rd January 2007, some 29 years after Ada May's election to Parliament, and some 200 years after independence. Nancy Pelosi made history as the first woman speaker of the United States House of Representatives. Who then could, with any justification, challenge the fact that our leaders are progressive thinkers in promotion of women leadership? Only recently I came across a news item that stated that Rebecca Dagger is changing the country's political landscape, making history by being the first female speaker of Uganda's parliament on May 19, 2011. I thought we in tiny St. Kitts Nevis have had 2 already. Ladies and gentlemen, we are just a tiny speck. Most people would expect us to be following the lead of great powers in terms of human rights, female empowerment, and other important indicators of human advancement. Wouldn't you think? That may be the case with some tiny nations, and that may be the case with some political parties on some tiny nations. But that certainly is not the case where the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party is concerned. Because long before most of the people alive in St. Kitts and Nevis today were even born, long before women's liberation became the rallying cry for women in North America and Europe, long before all of the mass movements had reached a fever pitch beyond our shores, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party had looked at the life, the ability, the contributions, and the importance of Bradley and of Ada May Edwards, a woman of outstanding abilities here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and decided that she possessed exactly the type of attributes that are needed by any person being placed at the helm of a legislative body. Ada May Edwards, the first female speaker of St. Kitts and Nevis and our first female parliamentarian, was indeed historic, indicative of the strong progressive values and ideas that have always shaped and defined our party. What did the prominence and weight of Ada Mae Edwards say to women of this country? Firstly, it told them that their minds, their judgment, and their intellects was second to none. Secondly, it told them that they could indeed assume leadership roles and aspire towards leadership roles, indeed, roles of final and respected authority, the highest levels of the nation's business. Thirdly, it told them that hard work and dedication do have concrete and quantifiable rewards. And fourthly, it told them that as far as the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party was concerned, it is one's ability and one's efforts that determine one's accomplishments, not one's gender. Successive Labour leaders continued to push for women in politics. And so in 1979, Ermine Quealy Evelyn became the party's first female candidate in Nevis election. And in 1980, in national elections in Nevis. Though unsuccessful, we admired and respected her courage, conviction, and pioneering spirit, which paved the way for those of us who followed. Labour lost power in 1980, and for 15 years, the working class was attacked, sidelined, and humiliated by retrogressive and uncaring government. When the then government, as part of its attack, sought to take Massey's House, the symbol of the working class movement, the women sprang into action. It was their numerous fundraising events, led and organized by Anne Liburd, helped to ensure that Massey's House remained the bastion of the working class that it has always been. Anne Liburd's blackboard, which she updated daily, became a popular avenue for dissemination of information. One ECCB top official told me that when he came to St. Kitts to work during the 1980s, ECCB was then opposite his house. He said he was amazed at this woman who dutifully updated the board every day. He referred to her as the opposition leader. He never missed a chance to read it every day during his coffee break. The board attracted all persuasions and even terrorists. This aggravated the government of the day, who sent police officers to remove the board. So much for freedom of speech, freedom of expression. The board was arrested and was never bailed. I find it amusing today when under a Labour government we see the freedom of the press, free speech and expression. When people criticize the Prime Minister and the government morning, noon, afternoon, and night, we hear talk of dictatorship. We say, Father, forgive them, they know not. The party was, however, adamant that women should be represented in Parliament. And so in 1980, Mrs. Eugenie Byron Condor was appointed as our first female senator in opposition. The first woman to be so appointed, and the second woman in Parliament, first being Ada Mae Edwards. It is again noteworthy that it took a Labour government, after 15 years in opposition, to appoint 2 female senators in 1995, the persons of Anne Wigley and your humble servant. To date, 3 female senators have been appointed to Parliament. All 3 have been appointed by Labour. The importance of women in leadership to the development of our country was again promulgated by Labour when Jacinth Henry Martin was chosen as a candidate in Constituency 5 in the 2000 election. The difference between those who pay lip service to women and those who respect women and have a genuine interest in their development was starkly illustrated. Jacinth's candidacy was not just a stopgap measure to fill up the slate of candidates, nor was she to run in a constituency where her chances of success were 0 or even minus. Indeed, Jacinth was successfully returned, became the second female to be elected to office, first being Constance Mitchum in 1984. Jacinth's bid for re-election failed in 2005, but Labour's unrelenting persistence to see women in Parliament led to the candidacy of your humble servant in the 2010 elections in Central Bastille. It is said that as Central Bastille goes, so go the elections. And for Labour to place confidence in a woman to contest that seat in difficult circumstances in its bid for a 4th term bears out the thrust of my presentation today, that it is that successive Labour leaders have consistently been progressive thinkers in their promotion and encouragement of women in leadership. The elections of 2010 are now history, and the defeat of the opposing candidate in every single box. It's historic. Frankly, it had little to do with me, and everything to do with all those men and women who worked tirelessly to secure Labour's victory in Central Bastia. I'm indeed grateful to them for their guidance. Ladies and gentlemen, study after study all over the world has shown that the opportunities that are available to women have a strong impact on the strength and stability of the nation's families and therefore the nation itself. The St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party has always understood and known that. It has, as a result, despite ongoing opposition, striven to improve policies and programs that make women more independent, more capable of providing for themselves, more capable of providing for families. We've just introduced legislation providing equal pay for equal work to ensure that with the advent of new companies coming to our shores, anti-female discriminatory practices that may be common elsewhere are not brought here. The new Pensions Act for auxiliary workers is also beneficial to women. A large number of women fall into that category of workers. We continue to lobby for a pension or some form of gratuity for workers at the industrial site so that they would not be empty-handed should they decide to leave their places of employment after 10, 15, or 20 years. As we know, the vast majority of workers at the industrial site are female, 95%. This effort, therefore, is not only pro-worker, it is strongly and indisputably pro-woman and pro-family. We have recently collaborated with the police, establishing the Special Victims Unit in response to the increase in domestic violence and physical and sexual abuse of children. Even though this phenomenon can have victims of the gender, the statistics show that the victim is most often female. Throughout the history of the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, therefore, we have consistently and unfailingly given positions of authority and power those women whose abilities and efforts made the important contributions they had made and wish to continue making to our country. At the same time, we have also consistently remained alert to pockets of female vulnerability or exploitation that exist throughout the Federation, and have moved to enact legislation and implement policies to protect and empower women involved. In the process, we continue to make St. Kitts and Nevis stronger, more stable, and a place of greater promise. As an ancient African proverb reminds us, show me a nation's women, and I will show you a nation's future. Under Labour, a bright light shines on our future. Happy 80th anniversary. Long live the Labour movement. Long live the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party.